9:10 a.m., a voice calls 911. That voice, calm, too calm. The kind of calm that chills you to the bone. The caller is Brian McManus. He reports that his wife, Ann, has just taken her own life. He describes it as an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Sounds tragic, right? But that was a lie. When police stormed in, the story fell apart fast. Suicide by gun? Then where's the gun? Where's the shell casing? The woman on the bed, Ann, didn't kill herself. She'd been beaten, brutally, savagely. Blood splattered all the way to the ceiling. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a massacre. And the man who made that calm 911 call? He's suspect number 1. What do you think of that calm voice? Could you sound that composed? Unless you were the one who pulled the trigger? Tell me what you think in the comments below. And if you want to uncover the truth behind this twisted act, subscribe right now. Because to understand why he killed her, first, we have to understand how he deceived her. To understand why he had to kill her, first, we have to understand how he deceived her. Who did he destroy? The victim was Lucille Ann McManus, but to her friends and neighbors, she was lovingly known as Miss Ann. And she was the definition of kindness. At 63, Miss Ann was a widow, the heart of her neighborhood, the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday, waved at every passerby, and filled her home with warmth and family. She lived in a happy multi-generational home with her granddaughter Jessica and 2 great-grandchildren. She was a grandmother, a mother, and a friend. But she was lonely. Her husband had passed away. Her family was wonderful. But in those quiet moments at the end of the day, she longed for companionship. You know that feeling, don't you? She wasn't looking for some movie-style romance. She didn't need grand gestures or candlelit dinners. She just wanted someone to share a morning coffee with, someone to watch TV with in the evening, someone kind. And here lies Miss Ann's fatal flaw. She trusted too easily. She always saw the good in people. She believed deep down that everyone was decent. But that faith in humanity, that beautiful kindness, made her a target. She was the perfect prey. In 2022, at 61, Miss Ann did what millions of others were doing. She decided to give online dating a try. She joined Tinder, posted a few photos, and started exploring. She had no idea that this simple decision was signing her death warrant. Because while Miss Ann was scrolling through profiles hoping to find companionship, someone else was scrolling too. He wasn't looking for love. He was hunting. He was looking for opportunity, for loneliness, for vulnerability. And then, her profile appeared on his screen. That's when Brian McManus, 55 years old, entered the picture. His profile? Oh, it was perfect. A charming British gentleman with an impressive background in law enforcement. He told Miss Ann he had served 17 years with the London Metropolitan Police. A man of honor, right? A protector. But it was all a lie. Here's the truth he hid. He'd been fired from the London police force. Why? Because multiple women accused him of making them feel sexually threatened. He was dismissed in disgrace. And that wasn't the first time he'd deceived a woman in America. He had once been married to a woman in Idaho. And that marriage ended with him being arrested for domestic violence. See the pattern? A violent man. A sexual predator. A manipulator. He was searching for his next target. And a way to stay in the United States. Then he found her. Miss Ann. Kind, trusting, and full of heart. His charm, like any master manipulator's, was flawless. He knew exactly what to say. And within just 3 months he proposed. He moved into Miss Ann's home. The con had begun. See the pattern yet? A violent man. A predator. A manipulator. He was always searching for his next target. And then he found kind, trusting Miss Ann. His charm, like any master manipulator's, was flawless. He knew exactly what to say. He talked about wanting a fresh start in America, about building something meaningful. And Miss Ann, a lonely woman longing for companionship, believed him. Things moved fast. Almost dizzyingly fast, just 3 months. 3 months after that first Tinder message, he was down on one knee. He proposed. Sounds like love at first sight? A fairy tale romance in later life? Don't kid yourself. It wasn't love. It was a business deal. A con. Why the rush? Because Brian McManus was running out of time. He needed something. Something Miss Ann could give him. It wasn't love. It was citizenship. The whole British gentleman. Act had one goal. To get a green card and stay in the U.S. Legally, witnesses would later testify in court that the marriage appeared to be specifically arranged to benefit Brian's immigration status. This was a man fired from the London police for sexual harassment, a man arrested in Idaho for domestic violence, and now he had found the easiest way to start over. No job, no effort, just marry a lonely 63-year-old widow. And Miss Ann? With her endless trust, she said yes. In 2022, they got married. Brian moved into the home on Wake Forest Drive. He instantly became part of the household, living with Miss Ann, her granddaughter Jessica, and 2 great-grandkids. But the moment he stepped into that house, the moment the marriage papers were filed, the mask began to slip. The charming gentleman started to disappear, replaced by someone distant, cold, and detached. He began taking business trips. He told Miss Ann his job required him to fly to Florida often. He'd pack his bag, kiss her goodbye, and vanish for days. He lied smoothly, vague talk of meetings and business opportunities. But he wasn't flying to Florida for work. He was flying there to see his mistress. You heard that right. The man who conned a 63-year-old widow into marrying him for a green card couldn't even stay faithful to her. He was living a double life, betraying both women. And the mistress in Florida? She was married too. A double betrayal. Then he'd come back from those trips and slip right back into character. The doting husband, telling Miss Ann how much he loved her, joining family dinners, playing his part. Prosecutors would later describe him as a textbook narcissist who thought he was the smartest man in the room. And that arrogance would be his undoing. He had everything he wanted. A home, a wife to fund his lifestyle, a legal path to stay in America, and a mistress in Florida. He thought he'd won. He thought he was untouchable. But then, in November 2023, in one single stupid moment of arrogance, he destroyed everything with a text message. Do you think this was a late-life love story? A 55-year-old British gentleman finding love with a kind 63-year-old widow? A second chance at happiness? Think again. This wasn't love. It was a scheme. A cold-blooded con. Remember, this so-called former police officer had a filthy past in the UK. He'd been fired for sexually threatening women. He fled to America, looking for a fresh start. And that's when he found Miss Ann. The perfect target. He charmed her. He said all the right things. And then, before anyone could even process it, he proposed. How long did it take? A year? 6 months? No. 3 months. 3 months after the first Tinder message, he was already down on one knee. Why the rush? Doesn't that sound strange to you? A 55-year-old man with a failed past, suddenly desperate to marry after just 12 weeks? He wasn't in love. He was racing against time. He wasn't looking for a partner. He was looking for a sponsor. He needed something. Something only Miss Ann could give him: U.S. citizenship. The entire British Gentleman Act had one single purpose: to get a green card and stay in America. Legally, witnesses would later testify in court that the marriage appeared to be specifically arranged to serve Brian's immigration goals, and here's the most disturbing part. This wasn't the first time he had used an American woman. He didn't just hide the fact that he'd been fired in the UK. He also hid a failed marriage right here in the United States, in Idaho. And how did that marriage end? With his arrest for domestic violence. See the pattern? He wasn't just a sexual predator. He was a violent abuser. He had a record of assaulting his previous wife. But did he tell Miss Ann any of that? Of course not. He forgot to mention that he was dangerous. He forgot to mention his past. He showed her only the mask, the retired police officer. He tricked her. He exploited her loneliness and trust to secure a ticket to stay in the country. Miss Ann, with her open heart, believed she'd found her fairy tale ending. She married him. She welcomed him into her home, brought him into her family, living together with her granddaughter and great-grandchildren. She gave him everything, and Brian, he got exactly what he wanted. A path to a green card, security, victory. The con was complete, and once the predator had his prey, he grew careless. Once he thought he was safe, his mask began to crack, and he slipped deeper into a shameless, double-faced life. Do you think that after pulling off the scam, he would just sit quietly? Do you think he'd be grateful? That he'd at least pretend to be a good husband until he got his precious green card? No deception ran in his veins. His greed had no limits. The moment his immigration path looked safe, the moment he settled into Miss Ann's warm, welcoming home, the charming gentleman began to fade away. And soon, the business trips began, a lot of them. He told Miss Ann, his 63-year-old wife, that his work required him to fly to Florida all the time. He'd pack a bag, kiss her goodbye, and disappear for days. He lied smoothly, talked vaguely about meetings and business opportunities. But he wasn't going to Florida for work. You know what he was doing there? Was he meeting clients? No, he was with his mistress. You heard that right. The same man who conned a 63-year-old widow into marrying him for a green card couldn't even stay faithful to her. He was cheating on the woman who literally saved his life. And here's the part that shows just how rotten and shameless he really was. The mistress in Florida was also married, a double betrayal. He didn't care. He despised marriage. He despised the women he used. How bold was he? He'd fly back from Florida, walk into Miss Ann's house, and instantly switch roles, playing the loving husband again. Saying, "I missed you." Sitting at family dinners, smiling, pretending, prosecutors. Later called him a textbook narcissist who thought he was the smartest man in the room. He truly believed he could never be caught. He had everything he wanted. A house, a wife who supported him, a legal path to stay in America, and a mistress waiting in Florida. He thought he'd won. But then, November 2023, in one single moment of arrogant stupidity, he destroyed everything himself. He pulled out his phone, probably to text his mistress in Florida. Something romantic, something intimate, and in his smug carelessness, he tapped the wrong name. The message meant for the mistress went straight to Miss Ann. Boom, the mask came off. Imagine Miss Ann's shock. The man she trusted. The lies laid bare. The green card scam. The affair. All of it exposed. And Miss Ann, strong, proud, and furious, didn't stay silent. She confronted him. She threatened him, and that was the moment she unknowingly signed her own death sentence. Remember what I said earlier? Boom, the message was sent to the wrong person. The mask had fallen off. Imagine Miss Ann's shock. The husband she trusted, the British gentleman she'd opened her heart to, turned out to be a liar, a predator, a cheater. But Miss Ann, at 63, was not some fragile woman. She had survived the loss of her husband. She had built her family with her own two hands. She wasn't going to stay silent. She was furious, and she confronted him. Picture that argument inside the house on Wake Forest Drive. The rage of a betrayed woman. "You lied to me! You used me!" Brian probably tried to deny it, to smooth things over. But Miss Ann had the proof. That one text message. And in that storm of anger and heartbreak, Miss Ann made a mistake. A fatal one. She didn't just threaten to throw him out. She didn't just threaten divorce. She went straight for the one thing Brian McManus actually cared about. In her fury, she looked him in the eye and said she would call immigration. She would report the entire marriage. She would expose it as a green card scam. Do you understand what that meant? For Brian, that was the end of the line. This wasn't just about embarrassment. This was total destruction. The green card he'd schemed and lied to get. Gone. His new easy life in America? Over. He'd be deported. Deported where? Back to the UK. Back to the place where he'd been fired and disgraced for sexually harassing women. Back to being a nobody. Everything he'd built, all on lies, was about to crumble. All because of one stupid text. And now what does a narcissist, an abuser, a cornered predator do? Does he accept the consequences? Does he beg for forgiveness? Does he pack his bags and leave? No, in his twisted mind, the problem wasn't I did something wrong. The problem was, how do I silence the threat? Miss Ann, the kind, trusting widow, had turned from a ticket into an obstacle. From a sponsor into a witness. And in Brian McManus's rotten worldview, troublesome women could simply be handled. The transformation, from a manipulative husband to a cold-blooded killer, had begun. He had the motive. Now he needed a plan. What do you think? Was her threat to call immigration the moment she unknowingly signed her death warrant? Or had he planned to kill her long before that? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. And if this level of cruelty and calculation makes your blood boil, hit subscribe right now. Because he didn't just kill her. He staged the perfect suicide, and he did it, the very day after Thanksgiving. The threat to call immigration had just signed Miss Ann's death warrant. The monster had been cornered, and it bit back. He didn't wait. He didn't waste time. He struck the very next day after Thanksgiving. He had a plan. He waited. He waited until Miss Ann, his 63-year-old wife, had just finished her shower. The moment she was most vulnerable, least prepared. What did he use? A gun, too loud. A knife? Too messy. He used something from the garage, a rubber mallet. Do you grasp that level of cruelty? He used a tool, something meant for fixing things, and used it to destroy a life. He used it to attack the woman he had sworn to love. He struck, and struck again. Blood splattered the walls, the ceiling. But Miss Ann didn't die instantly. She fought back. She clawed at him, struggling for her life, a detail investigators would later confirm. And when the mallet wasn't enough to finish her, the so-called ex-cop from Britain used his bare hands. He strangled her. He squeezed the life out of Miss Ann with his own hands. And then, when she lay motionless in her own bedroom, the cold-blooded killer began phase 2. He didn't panic. He didn't call 911. He went mechanical. Calm, methodical. He had to clean up. He had to hide the weapon. He had to build his alibi. So what did he do? He did the unthinkable. He used the family dog. The dog Miss Ann adored. He leashed the dog and calmly walked out the front door, maybe even waving to a neighbor. Just another normal morning, right? Just walking the dog. But was he really going for a walk? No. Did he take the usual route? No. He went straight to a drainage ditch near the house, an unusual path. And there he threw everything into the murky water. The rubber mallet still stained with Miss Ann's blood and hair. Her cell phone, so no one could call her, so he could erase every trace. He disposed of the evidence, and that poor dog saw it all. Then what? He came back home, unclipped the leash, probably took a shower, washing his wife's blood off his arms. Then he waited. At 9:10 a.m., about 30 minutes after he'd left, he picked up the phone. He called 911, and with that eerily calm voice we heard at the start of this story, he lied. He reported a suicide. He said, "It looks like a self-inflicted gunshot wound." He thought he was the smartest man in the room. He had a story, a tragic suicide. He had an alibi. I was walking the dog. He had hidden the murder weapon. He thought he'd created the perfect crime. But he forgot. He forgot one thing. He forgot that we live in the 21st century. He forgot about the neighbor's camera. He thought he was the smartest man in the room. He thought he'd committed the perfect crime. He had his suicide story. He had his dog-walking alibi. He had hidden the weapon. He thought he'd erased every trace. But he forgot. He forgot one thing. He forgot that we live in the 21st century. He forgot about the neighbor's camera. The moment police arrived at the scene, they knew this wasn't a suicide. Where was the gun? Blood was splattered across the ceiling. The wounds? They were from blunt force trauma, not a gunshot. The suicide lie fell apart in 5 seconds. And the dog-walking alibi? It collapsed even faster. Exhibit number 1, security camera footage. A neighbor's camera captured everything. 8:45 a.m., Brian leaves the house with the dog. Where does he go? Out for a stroll? No. The footage shows him walking straight to a drainage ditch. He throws multiple objects into the water, and then walks back home. Less than 30 minutes later, he calls 911. Police knew exactly where to look. They waded into that same drainage ditch. And what did they find? Exhibit number 2, the murder weapon, the rubber mallet, still covered in Miss Ann's blood and hair. Her cell phone too, game over. His alibi had just become the evidence that convicted him. But this next part, this is what hits the hardest. This was Miss Ann's final act of defiance. Exhibit number 3, the autopsy. They confirmed the cause of death, blunt force trauma and strangulation. But more importantly, they found Brian's DNA under her fingernails. Do you know what that means? Miss Ann fought back. She didn't go quietly. She clawed at him, his face, his hands, leaving the killer's DNA behind. The scratches on Brian's arms, the ones he couldn't explain, they were Miss Ann's signature from beyond the grave. She exposed her murderer herself. And when the monster was cornered, what did he do? Did he confess? No, he told one last despicable lie. He suggested that Miss Ann's own granddaughter, Jessica, and her boyfriend might have done it. Can you imagine that level of cruelty? He murdered their grandmother, and then tried to frame them for it. The lie fell apart instantly. FBI cell data showed Jessica was miles away at the time. July 2025, trial day. He had no lies left. The jury took just 2 hours to deliberate. Verdict, guilty of murder. Sentence, life in prison without parole. The judge looked him dead in the eye and said, "You crushed another human being's skull." The monster was finally caged. The green card conman, the abuser, the killer. Miss Ann, a kind, trusting woman, deserved golden years surrounded by her family. Instead, she became the prey of a predator. Brian McManus's twisted journey from England to Idaho to Georgia ended behind bars. But what do you think? Which piece of evidence sealed his fate the most? The security footage or the DNA under Miss Ann's nails? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to keep uncovering the darkest truths behind real cases, don't forget to subscribe.